always curious to see what Future's up to, because he's a Terran that, or you find this with a lot of the younger players. They're very, what's the word? If they think something's good, everything else is bad, and they're very confident in what they think is good. You know, like very confident, very decisive players. So here he is opting for barracks first, then gas, which people are, you know, it's still a very good opening. Tends to lead more to like Reaper than Marine. More standard play, if you will.
Yeah, you know, I think Future's been a player that I've seen do a bit of everything. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's been able to kind of separate himself from a lot of the other American Terran players, that he can throw in mech. He's very good with his bio and definitely likes to be out on the map and be aggressive, which, like, when you look at the best Terran players, you know, they're the ones that are leaving their bases for a reason. And I actually really like this opening already. SCV Scout, I love the Marine into the fast reactor. I think this build's actually a really good complement to the way that the PvT meta has been going. But on the other side, Nina with I believe that was the cybernetics core first. So she's going to have a lot of options for how she wants to bring that early pressure. And I do think that some early pressure from our Protoss player would definitely be something good. If she could knock Future off of his rhythm, if he is stuck in that mindset of this is the only way to do something, then I think that's the best opportunity, right? Force him to improvise, force him to call an audible. Yeah.
Players with plans, if you let them kind of ride through their plan, it's always a bit of a tough game. And I don't know how Future's playing necessarily, whether he's playing more reactive based or whatever. I have to give him credit though. The way that he scouted with the SCV and then he hit his other SCV behind the mineral line and managed to sneak down his CC there. That was something that was really, really cute. You saw Nina kind of react last second there as well, because she kind of knew that something was a little bit weird here. Like, why isn't there an SCV coming down this ramp? But it worked out in Future's favor. Now, when we looked at Massa do this Marine first build on Everdream in his previous match, we got to see that he didn't keep on pumping out Marines. He switched to Hellions and such, but Future's doing the Marine version where you just whip out a lot of bio very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as you feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ben, but I feel like one of the nice things about this is you have a little bit more stability if, you know, for using those Marines to help defend if necessary. Like if you end up getting hit with those Blink Stalkers or something, if the drop comes your way, you can kind of split the Marines between both bases. You don't have to just choose one or the other. But also, since we do have a medevac opening anyway out of this, it looks like it might just be like a soft Marine drop, or maybe he's going to wait for a second medevac and do like something really crazy. But it looks like Nina wants to go for, I'm going to assume this is a disruptor drop, but since it's Nina, it could also be Colossus for anybody tuning in. Nina is the Protoss player formerly known as Puck. So she's been around for a very long time and is kind of infamous for these sorts of builds that fast RoboBay play, particularly versus Terran.
I remember playing Nina on the ladder now. Like this is bringing back memories, flashbacks, repressed memories, if you will. But going for the 2 tanks in the medevac and going to fly across the map. I mean, Colossus drop is obviously pretty decent against the Marines. Not good against the tanks at all. And I do think Nina sniffed something was a little bit up there. But this is definitely going to be a really strong push. And depending on where Future wants to attack, that is a lot of vital structures on that high ground, all wrapped around that pylon. So this tank push could be absolutely threatening.
Yeah, there's a weird sort of, I don't even know how to describe it, but like the clash of these types of plays. If you had like Colossus range, this feels really sick, but the tanks on their own might be able to completely remove the Colossus from the equation as it's already very hurt. But on the other side, we all know that the Colossus is obviously going to be fantastic versus just regular unupgraded naked Marines. So Nina using her Colossus to try and push the Marines back. The Prism definitely has the opportunity to try and get some of these units onto the tanks, but that's what's going to need to happen to get rid of this, to dislodge this push. And unfortunately, the Observer dies, another Stalker just kind of dies out of nowhere. And the Cybernetics core looks like it's going to fall with the pylon powering the robotics facility. Cannot build another Colossus to Muslim.
This is a really unfortunate situation for Nina. You saw that she really wanted to go for this very low health tank, but kind of missed Micro a little bit and going for it again here. But the repair from Future actually keeping it alive for quite some time. Did trade out 2 Stalkers for it, but this was definitely a good start to this push by Future here. And it's not going to slow down anytime soon by the looks of it. Another tank does join. Thermal Lance starts up, even though it's under fire. That is very gutsy.
Yeah, it's like a tragic. Oh my god, I think the Prism just tried to take the Colossus across the map. By the way, it did take some damage on its way over there. The shields of it are gone, and there is a Viking. But yeah, it's kind of like a sad counter of the builds, right? You have this multiple tank opening without upgraded Marines, and that happens to be specifically what's going to be really strong against having only a Colossus and some Stalkers. But with the Viking here now, just recall the Colossus is the only thing that she can do, except now there's no Prism for her to move those units around and try to get the backstab anymore.
It's all well and good dealing that counter damage, which I think was definitely decent by Nina, but breaking out of this, how's it going to go? Dealing with the Liberator nicely. The Stalkers, though, they are all ridiculously low here. There is a Twilight Council coming, but there's obviously no blink on the field at all, and the resources lost tab. This is not how PvT is meant to go. And behind all this, Future got his 3rd base up, double engineering bay. He's just in very good shape.
I mean, everything went exactly perfectly as they could have gone for Future. He has the Viking now to zone as well. 4 siege tanks, nothing with any range to actually combat against those. Tragically, the Colossi will try to help shave down the bunker with just that 1 SCV. Maybe he can get it to burn, but unfortunately, I do not believe that the window of opportunity is really there anymore. Nina really needs another War Prism to either get herself out of there or reposition around this, but just now starting charge, I do not think she's going to be able to get it in time to break this contain to Muslim.
And the Robo died. So getting out that kind of tech is pretty damn hard when the structure got owned, right? And Future's just continually pushing on forward, and these are tanks now they're actually in range of the Nexus, and this resources lost tab, it's 2k resource lost against almost 5k by the Protoss. And while she is warping in Zealots and a Dark Shrine behind all this, Charge, Blink, they're not even remotely close to being done.
Yeah, and it's going to be very difficult to try and break this. Multiple bunkers, multiple siege tanks, and a very well executed attack and siege by the American Terran player, Future, who now has that 3rd base completely situated. Stim, 1-1, combat shield, all finishing up. And I'm going to be honest with you, as a Terran player in this situation, the one question you should be asking yourself is, what could kill me? There's missile turrets everywhere to Muslim. He's got plenty of detection.
Yeah, I thought this tank on the high ground move was a bit too ballsy, a bit too cocky, but there's nothing really for Nina to pounce with. And yeah, it's just really, really rough. Oh, charge is done. This might be the end of this little push. Although still no blink, and oh my gosh, these units of Nina's just aren't doing what she wants them to do at all.
No, as she was warping them in, they were getting hit even by the tanks. And siege tanks are not known for how good they are against Zealots. But there's the DTs, unable to get one of the tanks. Oh man, really
that feeling when your DTs are revealed to not get a kill at all, and it's like then you have to warp them into Archons to try and break out of this contain. Your opponent's on 3 bases, taking a 4th CC by the looks of it as well. Future's got this game really wrapped up here. Very nicely played by the young Terran.
Yeah, we do have another Prism trying to be made, possibly to try to counterattack after the siege is broken, but Future makes a beautiful target fire onto Nina's Colossus with those tanks, and she bleeds out a lot trying to get out of this. So, I mean, you're stuck. You got a 2-base Protoss now with 82 supply. This one DT is going to go across the map, and it's going to be pretty sad. I mean, some SCVs will die, but the DT is not going to have a crazy amount of longevity here to try and do anything.
I always love that feeling when it's like, oh, look, I don't have concussive. Okay, I'll get concussive now. And it's like that DT almost did Future a favor right there. But yeah, Nina's now resorting back to getting the Robo Bay again. Like this is, these are all buildings that she had before that she's having to remake. And it's just a really horrible position. And Very unfortunate. One thing that she does have going for her is she has finished her 1-1, but she has like 5 units out, so it's not really going to help that much.
Yeah, the Archon drop versus Terran, a not exactly common strategy that we see come out as the rest of the army for Future is going to start to push up the ramp towards the third, and GG is called as Future does take game number 1 of this best of 3.
That was a really good opening by Future. It's one that I like to do myself. Not necessarily with the medevacs, but he made the medevac seem like you absolutely should have it in part of that push. And given that I know that Nina was doing this kind of stuff almost years ago with like the Colossi drop and what have you, and knowing that it is kind of susceptible to these kind of tank pushes, that does not bode well for Nina, given that Future just completely ran at her with a build that is absolutely almost formulated to deal with Nina.
What more could you ask for, right? You have 2 siege tanks against a player that wants to rush that Robotech, and it's not Immortals, right? And even then, right, with the bunkers and the Marines, you can still do a lot of damage to her. But I think especially like the Viking that came right after the Liberator, there was just so little you can do because it's a very much so like a finesse build that Nina was trying to do. She wanted to keep Future in his base. She wanted to keep Future on the defensive, running his Marines around, trying to get a Viking to kill the Prism. But he took action so much faster than Nina could actually get the build going that there was just no opportunity to try and capitalize on that.
Yeah, when you talk about players with plans and stuff, there's a lot of players that kind of thrive in chaos. Like, they're reactive, they'll change to the situation and stuff, but there's a lot of players with plans and what have you. And it felt very much like Nina is the one that wants to throw something at their opponent to see how they react, as opposed to being the other way around. Because you saw she really wanted to kill that tank and just felt very flustered. A lot of micro moves weren't quite up to that level, and that tank staying alive for as long as it did.
Did not have the right races for the players set in the lobby before it started, so we're going to remake the lobby real quick. But yeah, it's really hard, right? It's a momentum-based build, and one of the hardest things to deal with when you go for anything like that is just a build that hits you before that ball gets rolling. You know, if you can't push it over the edge down the mountain, then it's just a random boulder. So we'll have to see what Nina can do on Golden Wall, which will be the second map. I mean, if there's a map that kind of lends itself to trickery, this is it, the Muslim.
It certainly is. Like, this is a map that, if you are going to go for a Colossus drop, this is probably a better one. I do wonder, though, like, there's a lot of builds that are very tricky right now that aren't necessarily as committed as Colossi drop. Like, Parting's 4 Gateway Stalker build is super duper good. Especially on a map like Eternal Empire, it feels. So I know Nina does like her Stalkers a lot. She always has. So I'm wondering why she hasn't adopted that sort of play and instead it's kind of going for her own brand. It just feels very risky to me.
Well, I agree with you there. I think one of the biggest skills that Nina has is her Blink Stalker control. We are loaded in, though, in the bottom left. Leading the series 1-0, we have Future.
And spawning over in the bottom right-hand side with the cool Nexus skin, it is Nina.
Let us see what our players would like to do for this game. I mean, PvT on Golden Wall. I mean, Protoss players that open with Blink, right? You don't really think as much about all these minerals that are blocking the pathing and moving around and whatnot. So you can definitely try to do harass in that way from the bottom side still, like on any other map, really, which makes me wonder how Nina will try to approach this game, because she could still go for another fast robo play. It's a good map for drop type stuff, but at the same time, you already pointed it out. Seems like Future is very aware of how Nina likes to play StarCraft, considering that the builds that she was doing a long time ago, years ago, honestly, in like WCS and everything, are still many of the strategies that she's using today.
I've got a question for you, Nate. Now, he's not going to do it, but I was going to ask, if you win a game like that, where your opponent obviously doesn't react super duper well, to the build? Would you fault a player for doing the exact same thing again?
You know, God, sometimes just the thought that somebody wouldn't try something twice is enough to make them lose to it, right? So it's like you've got to. Oh, that's a hard question to answer. The number of games that I lose when I get a rematch against someone and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to blind counter. They probably only do one thing every game. And then, I get clapped and I'm like, well, obviously they're capable of doing more than one build order in a matchup. And at this level, you kind of have to be, right? So,
yes.
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you, Benjamin.
Whoa, we're bringing 2016 back here because this is a Beyond 2-1-1 against Protoss thus far. And I like it. Golden Wall's an unusual map. Nina so far has shown that she likes the Robotech as opposed to anything else. And boop, as soon as I say that, I haven't watched Nina in a long time, just because of the schedule clashes and stuff. But yeah, it is same old Nina. It feels like very much into the kind of cheesy, quirky robo plays and what have you. And yeah, I'm liking how Future's just kind of handling this series. He's doing weird builds. Or when I say weird, the 2-1-1 is definitely odd. The build before was a bit more normalistic, but yeah, I feel he's going to really throw Nina off with these builds here.
Yeah, this is definitely not something that we've seen a tremendous amount of recently. I feel, and like I said, if you disagree with me, feel free to say so. But I feel like the 1-1-1 has just kind of taken over TVP opening wise, right? It's just the flexibility of it versus some of the attacks Protoss can do just seems to be too valuable in many situations.
No, yeah, I think one of the things that's really cool about the 1-1-1 as well is the fact that there's so much variety behind it as well. If Nina does go for the 2-1, or rather the Colossus drop, by the way, this could get a little bit gnarly for Future, given that he is going for 2-1-1. Like, he's just going to have 16 Marines kind of going to go over and drop. Yeah. Oh my gosh, and this all gets scouted as well.
So you see this tiny little delay on the starport, nothing crazy, but you see this. You've got to feel a little bit better now if you're Nina. You're definitely going to have a good amount of units coming your way very shortly, but if she was capable of just barely squeezing out that Colossus, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of micro, and she's very good with that Prism if it's just Marines this time and no siege tanks to blast away from range. Like, there is the possibility that she can finesse her way out. But like I said, it's a momentum-based build. It's all about the finessing. Like, the Colossus on its own by itself will not kill everything. Even if it was a disruptor instead, still will not likely be able to kill everything on its own without a tremendous amount of APM invested into that Prism control.
I've had series in the past where I have done a build and I've realized my opponent hasn't done well against it. And I've just not changed it, right? And I've won some series like 3-0 just doing the exact same build against them. I am very surprised that Nina's build got shut down so hard and that she's kind of going for the same thing again, because that says to me that, maybe she feels she just messed up so hard and like it shouldn't have gone that way, but is this potentially the only build that she's got in her arsenal in this mashup?
It does kind of seem like that. Not necessarily the same angle there, but there's the Colossus. So for Future, I mean, if you kill the Prism, then you can just dive on the Colossus, right? But as long as both are alive in tandem, they can do so much. The Marines are going to die. It looks like there's just one left. The Prism and the Colossus both at about less than 10 hit points now. They will, of course, get their shields back, but I'm not going to lie. I'm really horrified at the thought of just flying this Prism across the map right now when there's a Viking being built. I'm actually really, really scared. This could go really well, or she could just face plant right now if this Prism flies into anything.
It's definitely ballsy. Yeah, I'm with you there. I am just amazed that Future went for that in the first place when he doesn't have a third CC. He went for 3 barracks behind this with tank production, Viking production, and he's very obviously going for like a 2-base pressure build, but he decided to throw away like 16 Marines.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the Prism control that we expect out of Nina. At least she still got that. Oh man, and definitely a good amount of damage done there. It really is going to just boil down to the transition, the follow-up that she's going to have for dealing with a possible next attack. But she's got her 3rd base coming up. There are siege tanks being made for Future, which I think is a good play if you're going up against Colossus. And with the Blink Stalkers upgrade being researched, extended thermal lance, she is trying to move into kind of a more of a normal PvT setup. And with the Colossi, I mean, anything is possible, but without that range upgrade, it's still going to be really hard to fight against siege tanks.
Oh, it certainly is. The +1 is definitely going to help on both sides if they do get it, but Nina's in a commanding position. Like this army by Future, it's 16 Marines less than it should be, honestly, Nathan. That isn't a position you want to be in, and he's down in supply while doing a 2-base all-in, basically. It's still going to be hard to hold this off, for sure.
Yeah.
But still, your win gets taken massively out of your sails when you commit so hard to something, and very often that can just show the eagerness of young players. Oh, I like the medevac into the main, though. This is ballsy. This is crazy. Is it going to get Blink here?
Yeah, denying Blink would be pretty sweet. There is still the Prism with speed available, but no Blink does mean that the repositioning ability is going to be quite limited. It looks like Nina's actually trying to engage the army now as one of the medevacs does get picked off, but oh my goodness, somehow keeping the Colossus, one of them alive.
So
I don't know.
This is messy. This is a messy game. Like that was a full medevac again being lost by Future. I think Nina. In fact, I'm not going to make any calls from now on. This Warp Prism is flying in with Zealots being dropped without charge. There is no Blink. Disruptor being used to take out a tank. That was nice. I think Nina's going to hold here. The Colossus is staying alive. All these Marines, they stimmed from across the map, so they arrived kind of wounded, kind of damaged here.
Ooh, wow, good save on the tank. The Colossus getting target fire by that siege tank. The control is definitely the strong area for Nina. It certainly sucks that she lost the ability to get her Blink up for those Stalkers, because I feel like could have saved a lot of what was lost pushing up the ramp against the tanks. But being able to dislodge a 2-base Terran push when you've got your third up and running as Protoss, there's few things that are going to feel better than that. And now she's going to bring something a little more spicy than just a Colossus. It's going to be that Disruptor in the Prism, and only bringing one just to make sure. Obviously, the Prism only has about 106 hit points due to the damage it took earlier, so don't want to chance it too much.
Whenever you fly by a medevac that's boosting at you like that, and it's like, oh, does it have Marines in? Like it's going to get me. But no, it's this Disruptor in Warp Prism is flying home, so lives to fight another day. Warping in sentries right now, that's also an unusual use of gas, I feel.
Yeah, I wonder if it's primarily like she wants to have force fields to keep the bio from diving on the Colossus. Is about the only thing that really springs to mind for me.
Yeah, I think
or the Disruptor for that matter.
Yeah, it's unusual, right? Like the Disruptor kind of does the job of the force fields, and when you're already teching, like the Templar Archives was already on the field, so there's more Stalkers now as well. Is Blink now done? No, but more Stalkers. Yeah, this game isn't fully making super sense to me, but I'm enjoying it either way, Nate. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, no, it's been a hell of a game. I mean, we talk about the advantage of Terran always being on the map, and that gold base is going to really supercharge that economy, despite how late it was taken. Big question marks then for Nina are going to be holding on to the expansions, because this map she's kind of expanding wide. But look at that, just this little contingent left over here, and another scenario where you wish you had that Blink from earlier. Yeah, no, she still actually has not started Blink again yet. I just been keeping my eyes on that, because I know that Blink Stalkers are definitely one of her strong points.
And that is something that makes Stalkers significantly worse, not having Blink, like not being able to have like teleport and catch medevacs and catch Vikings and stuff, and just potentially blocking your units from not bypassing them as well can be problematic. Future's behind this game. Like we can't make any mistake about that. He does have the gold base, which is cool, but Nina's on 4 bases right now with a far superior probe count, and even getting to a position where she's like, hey, I'm just going to get some cannons now. I'm playing safe. Now Blink starts. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the recognition on it. And the only reason why I keep talking about Blink, honestly, is because she's been relying on her Colossi to deal damage. And naturally, the predator of the Colossus is going to be the Vikings. So the Stalkers need to be able to reposition to catch those Vikings if they come at an awkward angle, or, they decide that they're just going to shoot from afar because the Stalkers aren't in position. Now, this is a massive attack, and there are 2 ghosts in there to try and EMP anything else that could be used to try and shut this down. But we've got Storm, we've got High Templar. It's going to be a crazy fight coming up.
Oh my God. I'm a tiny bit surprised that there wasn't like a second Warp Prism bought. If you want to be doing like High Templar drops, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of a flimsy prism, huh?
That is Larry, yeah. And right now, Future doesn't know that there isn't any blink for these Stalkers, so these Vikings can be a bit kind of crazy, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
But he doesn't know that. Like, he doesn't know that his opponent necessarily made that error without having blink. But this is a nice position for all these tanks. And is he going to go for the main drop again? Does look like it.
Yeah, I like this. Splitting the attention. This did end up getting that blink upgrade last time. Could actually deny it again, which would be pretty sad for Nina if that happened a second time in this game. A couple more units are going to come to reinforce this. Going to storm the drop. Put 2 of the storms on there, but the Vikings are actually coming over. Looking for the prism. Does unload 2 of the Templar before it gets sniped. But oh my goodness, that was a rush.
Certainly was. These tanks are etching ever so close now to the Protoss army, and that was a good storm. One of the Colossi doesn't quite fall, but all these Vikings are wounded now, and wow, Future's just rushing into the natural, but Nina with a huge flank on this army. Storms landing, Terran dying, although the Protoss is also dying, and a big flank on the left side from Future. Oh my gosh, is Future doing it?
Oh my God, he seems to have just barely been able to break her defenses. Nina with a good varied army, but the disruptor shot landing on the siege tanks may come back to bite her instead of hitting that bio forces. You only need a handful of Marines and Marauders if what's left over is just Stalkers. You're going to rip and tear those into pieces. It looks like Nina got 2 more Colossi on the way, but the siege tanks have really paid off big time for Future in this series. His even upgrades kills that natural, and a lot of this is going to get shut down, but he actually did get a 4th base behind all of it. Oh my God, without the Stalkers. Yeah, that Colossus was in a very vulnerable position, to say the least.
I've just been watching this Resources Lost tab this game. Like, Nina started off trading so damn efficiently and shut down a lot of what Future did. It was like 2K versus 500 or something. But now Nina's just traded so inefficiently. I really do think her army composition was... it just didn't make sense for a lot of it, you know? Like, it didn't quite have the real bulk that it needed, and right now, obviously fighting with not much. The Colossus are falling, the Zealots being warped in, and it's kind of trading pretty decently, but this is so scrappy and hard to hold.
Not having a massive core of upgraded charge lots, I think, was definitely one of the things that had to make Future feel a lot more comfortable. When he had like 6 or 7 tanks and you're only dealing with Colossi, Storm, and Stalkers, like, you just got to inch your way forward, and the zoning capabilities of that army on their own are going to be able to prevent you from really having any big hits dropped on your bio. And then you look at this production tab and you see everything that Future is putting out. He's looking pretty damn fierce now, Ben.
Yeah, I think the next thing to look at is what army is Nina going to muster against this. So there's going to be tanks, bio, medevac. There's nothing for Zealots to worry about. You're just going to need raw muscle to deal with this, like Archons to deal with just a little bit of tanking. Colossus are always decent to have in low numbers, I suppose, just to force out the Vikings, but it's going to be rough because this is going to be equally upgraded bio, and Future's now got a much better economy.
Oh boy. Now there is a good amount of vision available for Nina. She has 2 observers in surveillance mode that will see this drop coming. However, Benjamin, I now ask the question, what can she do about it? There's no energy for a recall in the main. The natural, it doesn't exist. So she can only just run her units home now. But in that time, pretty much everything is going to die.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's a pretty good answer to what she can do against this Nathanius, and it is pretty much die, like heal over, lose one of the robos. Okay, there is another Warp Prism, though, which did pick up a lot of High Templar.
Oh, that's storms.
That is one way to really deal with this, and while a lot of the main base was kind of forfeited, that was a nice hold by Nina.
That was fantastic, considering that she had to run her army from the 4th to the main base against like 6 fully loaded medevacs and didn't lose everything is an achievement in and of itself. keeping the High Templar alive is very important. But a lot of the tech was actually blown up, though. No Twilight, no more Templar archives. So to rebuild that tech, she's going to have to invest quite a bit. Actually lost the Robo, too, looks like.
Are you a little surprised that Future's carried on with tank production at this point in the game?
No, actually. I feel like Nina has just not actually had the money, maybe, less than wanted to build a tremendous number of Zealots. Like, I normally am not a big fan of siege tanks, personally, in Terran versus Protoss, but I think given the way that Future has been able to use them to force these terrible, like very cost inefficient fights that you were referencing earlier, I mean, I won't complain about it, right? It's working.
No, yeah, normally I can be like, okay, you normally stop at 2 tanks just for defensive purposes, but yeah, Nina's army compositions, they just haven't been as bulky as I feel they could be, and oh, this is always rough too. Like, oh, that is a sick storm though. Where did that come from?
Yeah, the storms definitely have been paying off in spades, and actually the Vikings are getting trimmed down too. These Archons, oh, you do not want to eat the splash damage on those medevacs. Stalkers grab at least one more of them, and wow, Nina is really hanging in there, and this game's teetering back in her control because, you know, despite all the damage to her infrastructure to Muslims, she still has a tremendous amount of economy. She's still got all those bases on the north side. She's ahead in workers by a fair margin. And of course, at this point, you have a lot of orbitals, so mules kind of contribute, but you need the scans too. And as low as these medevacs are.
I feel like this game for Future is one of those situations where you go to the gym, you get on the treadmill, and you know, you turn it up pretty high, and you're like, man, I'm doing so good. I'm going to see how I do on like the highest setting ever. And Future just kind of like notched it up all the way, and just, you know, it went way faster than he could ever handle. Like, he's been way too eager. That big bio army that he had, and he chased it down, and then he was in one blob. All it took was one storm to really kind of like send him home packing. And yeah, it's just way too eager in this game. And they've both been punishing each other for the mistakes, but it just feels like Future's mistakes this game have been far larger.
Yeah. I mean, the way, honestly, like, if I was just to break down my thoughts in a sentence, it seems like Future just kind of overestimated his lead. Like, he did a great amount of damage, and that was awesome. But then he's like, oh, I don't need to repair my medevacs. I can just doom drop over and over. Oh, I don't need to do X. I don't need to do Y. I don't need to do Z. I don't need to try to transition. I don't need to try to do anything, like get any other army composition stuff changes. Like, he's just been very stubbornly kind of tunnel visioning on this. And that might come back to what you were mentioning earlier, with the possibility that he just kind of like, he thinks he knows what he has to do and nothing else is going to work. But now you're building 6 SCVs at a time, 20 minutes into a TVP, and you're not feeling so good anymore.
No, he's not. And the ghost count's really good. Actually, that's one thing we can say is really awesome. Like 9 ghosts, that's going to be a whole army blanketed EMP'd. But yeah, like some of those drops, it was like, okay, your whole army is red. What do you want to do? You want to go back and heal, or at least like slow things down. The last thing you want to do is drop into your opponent and just kind of with 1 health units, because they're not going to bode very well. One thing I can say though is I don't think Nina knows where she is in this game or where her opponent is in this game, because to me it is very clear that, well, I don't think, does she even know about the top base? Okay, she does know about the top base, but no real run by attempts have been made at all. It's just been about sitting in the middle of the map, which is unusual.
Make a good point. Nina's, ever since the first Colossus drop, where she went in and grabbed like those 6 SCVs, she has not actually really been on the other side of the map. She hasn't really been able to bring the pressure to deal the damage. And if you really think about it, like, the way that Protoss is designed is supposed to be the defender oftentimes until they reach that super army. But I think what Nina is trying to avoid doing is basically what Future already did, which was, yes, I have this great army. I'm going to try and end the game now. And then one thing goes wrong and it all just poof, it's gone. So this army from Future is terrifying, and the army supply is within 6. So it's still very close, but there's going to need to be some phenomenal control from either side to win this. I really love the coverage, by the way.
By the way, these High Templars, so there's one on the right side, but there's one in the north as well. I think then that is a juicy storm, and these ghosts, they are melting. Nice EMPs counter on the army. Good counter splits against the disruptors as well. So much damage being done on both sides here by both of them. Oh, what a storm.
That storm! But see, I really loved everything about this fight so far for Future, and then look how much energy the Medivacs have. I think, you know, you've got your bio control group with your Medivacs. No time is spent healing at all during the fight because of the amount of stutter stepping, and then everything just goes into a meat grinder and dies in like 3 seconds. Like, I can't find any other way to describe that. GG, very well played by Nina. But right there is like, that's a little bit of the bullishness I feel out of Future. You know, you go through all these fights and your Medivacs are at 200 energy. The only reason that happens is because you either haven't fought at all, which obviously was not the case this game, or you just haven't given your units time to heal up. And unfortunately, that does end up costing him what could have been a good, quick 2-0 closeout. But now it is all tied up. I believe we are going to go to a quick break. Let me just check real quick here before we go into game number 3. Yes, so we'll be returning in a moment for the conclusion of Nina versus Future. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to find out who is going to be the winner of this best of 3. We've got Nina going up against Future. And to Muslim, I was kind of talking about this, the strength of the way that Nina likes to play. It's about momentum. It's about pushing the ball down the hill and letting it roll. You, I think, brought it up beautifully. That first push with the Marine tank after the double medevac drop would have been a lot stronger if it had 16 more Marines with it.
Yeah, it's always easy to be the observer and the guy that's been in this position before, because I know I was a guy that was doing a 2-on-1 a lot against Protoss, and very often it can feel like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to do this, but you have to realize your potential for doing a push like that, and it isn't the first Marine drop, it's the push afterwards with the tanks that's really going to be the kicker. Anyhow, spawning in the top right-hand side as our blue Protoss, it is Nina.
And spawning in the bottom left, the red Terran player, he is Future.
That's one thing that's always worth noting, by the way, is how people generally can get a little bit carried away with dealing damage, and they don't necessarily think about the follow-up. So, like, one thing that's happening in TVZ right now is people keep their Hellions alive, and then they'll utilize them later with like turning them into Hellbats for a push with like their first and second tank and stuff. And it really packs a punch as opposed to just throwing away the Hellions to try and kill as many drones as you can early on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally get that. And especially as someone who likes to play mech, like the value of keeping those Hellions alive, especially like, you know, these days, obviously we're watching a Terran versus Protoss right now, but just how good they are versus creep now, especially, you know, they kind of have a better, they hold their value better, I should say, past the opening. But the same can be said of many of those types of attacks, like that 2-on-1 that you were talking about, being able to do that Marine drop, see that Colossus and say, you know what, I'm going to pull back and do my tank thing, right? I'm going to get a Viking out to kind of keep the Colossus drop away. And then I'm going to try and get my tanks, withhold my Marine count. But instead, you know, like I said, I think that comes a bit to the cockiness, a bit of the overestimation of one's position, where Future's like, oh yeah, I could totally kill this Colossus, right? But that's when Nina's like, no, this is the thing. And I don't mean this in like a derogatory way about her at all. But like Nina would basically say, this is the thing that I'm really good at. Like this is the scenario that I want to be in. Trying to use a bunch of stimmed Marines with no combat shield to kill my Colossus Prism is like how I win half my games, right? Like that is her bread and butter. So trying to play against her at her own game, I think really showed a bit of overconfidence on Future's part, trying to close the series out. And that's why we're here in this game number 3. So if Future continues to overestimate himself and maybe the reality check will swing things back, then there's a very real possibility that Nina is able to pull out another scrappy game.
Certainly. This is one of the maps, by the way, that I love tank pushes on. I'm not saying that that's what Future's going to do, because so far it's been a very different opening to what he normally does when he went for the tank push, which was the single Marine into reactor. But this ground outside the natural, where there's like the high ground location just below this stalker, it's absolutely great for having siege tanks up on that location and then just being able to flak into the natural. And so far, it looks like Nina's opting for the same opening again with the Robo. Doesn't dive across the map with the Adept, by the way, at all.
Yeah, so playing it a little bit close, I guess, to home, just in case anything does come her way. And I guess my big question now, since we had 2 games in a row where Nina went for the fast robotics bay, is it going to be something in that vein again? We do have an observer coming out, but this feels a little more normal, if that makes sense.
Could be. It's 3 gateways before much is thrown down. Double observer. Okay, I do like the fact. Oh, okay, it is the Robo.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Our questions are all answered. Here's the Robo Bay. That was all I needed to see. I'm not sure about this one. I'm really not sure about this one. Future's going for a big bio play. And okay, so one of the things that I could be super wrong about, when a player opts for something like this, they got shut down so hard by the tanks, I'm always a bit like, are you sure you want to be doing that again? Like this weird kind of build? And it's like, yeah, of course. Now, if she knows that Future is a guy that likes to do a lot of biocentric openings with a lot of Marines, then it's good. So it's not necessarily just down to this being quote unquote bad, but it can be a lot about knowing that her opponent isn't necessarily super duper comfortable against it as well. Ooh, Widow Mine drop. Gets into the natural here. Kind of the burrow game going on to deny mining. Just a single probe looks like is all the first one will get. And number 2 is going to start to burrow. The Stalker kind of trading the shots between the medevac and that mine. So the mine's going to get a couple more probe kills, the second one at least. And that medevac's going to barely slink away. Oh, well, this is, I guess, what the Prism is nice for. But these maps, the Muslim is the reason I said I like these maps for Terran. It is this reason right here. This is why they're good.
This scenery right here is quite lovely. I've never looked at it before.
Like a canyon. I don't know. This actually gives me like nightmare flashbacks to King Kong when they fall down that canyon thing. No, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about this. It's good to cast with you again, Ben. I'm having fun. It's been a long, fun day. It's been a long day. It's been a fun day. It's like we're back in Sweden.
It is. Oh, I liked utilizing a Widowmine there, just on top of the third, just to be a bit annoying, delaying that third a little bit. And let's see. Future is going for tanks, Vikings, and all that jazz. I like this single Viking that he's getting out along with the medevac. That would just mean that this Warp Prism is, it's not really able to do what it wants to do. Nina's a little bit supply blocked here and has been for a little while, which trying to produce some gateways and maybe a Nexus here too. But Future's definitely eking out a little bit of a supply lead here. I'm always so scared when medevacs fly out on their own against a person that wants to be super aggressive against you or has their own Warp Prism with speed.
It's such an awkward little half hash-ish standoff. I don't even know what word to use. But it's like I want you to try to unload your Marines to kill my Prism so that I can kill your Marines. But then Future's like, well, I don't know if I need to bring these Marines back. So
yeah. Nina was supply blocked again there at 8d6 for quite some time. So I don't know if she's just a little bit nervous here or focusing on other things. Whoops in a few zealots, defensive zealots that is. And does get to see what army comp she is up against here, which is the bio-tank stuff again. Do you ever feel sometimes you watch players and they might be... So you know how in StarCraft 2, macro is obviously one of the most important aspects of the game, right? Keeping up your macro, making sure you don't get supply blocked, your macro cycles and such. And some players can maybe focus a little bit too much on the micro part of it. And it doesn't really get you as much of a lead as it would be as if you just focus on the macro part. Sometimes I feel when I'm watching Nina, and in fact Future maybe a little bit too, they aren't focusing on the macro part as much as they probably should be.
Yeah, well, I was going to say in the last game, or at least even in this game possibly too, Nina builds very piecemeal armies. She has a bit of everything, but not really enough of anything, if that makes sense. But because Future keeps diving so hard onto those tech units to try and kill them, Nina's able to still take advantage of that because she does have an answer somewhat to everything. And he's just constantly overcommitting into her forces. And this is what we're seeing right here. Just a handful of Vikings being out micro by this Prism. Now the Marines still, if they're allowed to get up close, can still do a ton of damage though. But yeah, it is kind of an interesting thing. It kind of makes me think back to that joke where it's the Reaper expand becoming the normal build, and if for Terrans was one of the worst things that ever happened to noobs because they all just end up floating 3,000 minerals trying to micro their first Reaper like they're Bjorn. Maybe shifting away from that will be better for the lower league players, but this triple drop goes towards the main base. Another great benefit of having a speed Prism with a Colossus, just Marines in your base, you're going to be able to roast them real quick. And again, I want to give a shout out to the great observer positioning of Nina. She really doesn't have a lot of dead zones as far as the coverage goes for her observers. No,
and this is one of the things that I would say a bit harsh on Future about the game prior. And this is something that I remember speaking with Soul about a while ago. Soul was watching my stream and he was like, Ben, you always win fights against Protoss. And then he sent me a replay. And when he retreated, he didn't drop his units to heal them. He just retreated with them staying in the medevacs. And then when he re-dropped again, they're all half health. And, his army was significantly weak. And I was like, hey, why don't you just drop them and heal? And he's like, Ben, you genius. I'm like, no, Soul, you're just being dumb. Just heal your units. They're way better if they don't drop in with half the health that they're meant to have.
It's funny because you think about non-Korean Terrans improving and getting better at StarCraft, and a lot of that comes from really emphasizing their aggression, because that's always been one of the more weaker parts about non-Korean Terrans, a little passivity in terms of the styles, and the Koreans are always pushing and always striking. But then if you take it too far and your units are never healed and you're constantly overstimmed, and you get into a max fight where your army's at 70% health but your medevacs are at full energy, and you're like, oh, why did I lose? It's well, you tried to fight your opponent with half the health of your army. No matter how good Marines and Marauders are, if you cut their health in half, you're not going to win against any maxed out force from anybody.
No, certainly. This army of Future is getting scary. The 3 ghosts mixed in. The upgrades are decent as well. 1-1. 1-1 is finishing up for Nina as well now, which is definitely a decent spot to be in. But the Shockwave upgrade is done, and I'm so scared for Future walking around in this big blob. And you can see Nina kind of sharking around. Oh, that Warp Prism does take a bit of a beating. Retreats back to the shield boundary. No, doesn't. Okay.
Good scan. Good scan. Sees those Templar dropped because, as you pointed out, that Warp Prism did get spanked a little bit there. But we've seen Nina kill like 4 of these armies, I think, over the last game and a half now. So let's see what she can do. There's the EMP into the center mass. The Warp Prism is coming with the Templar for the Storms. Now the Siege tanks are both still alive. The Bio did stim back. They don't have a tremendous amount of healing potential available for them. So it's really the anchor point for the tanks at the moment.
This was a much better fight for Future until he ate that Storm, but purely because he didn't eat as many Storms. Like, he was a bit more hesitant, a bit more careful about the Warp Prism positioning and stuff, and Nina's definitely on the back foot with this, and she isn't trading as well this game. Oh, I think this is too ballsy, though. Like, look how red that army is of Future right now. It's
so low.
In dire need.
He's gonna land the Vikings again. There's 3 Immortals. Okay,
yes, that was questionable.
Okay, well, the Immortals the Immortal count does get cold a bit, but now you're reaching the point where like a round or 2 of Zealots that get warped in could actually help with the rest of this army clean it all up. Future hits the Nexus a bit, then hits the Pylon, slight indecisiveness, and there's the lift up to try and run away. We don't really have enough Stalkers to chase because there's still 3 tanks there.
Okay, this is the position with the tanks that I said at the start that I really like. Like this kind of high ground situation. So coming out of that natural, it's just a death trap. And then it's like you're split between your natural and your third. Future is so gutsy with such low health units. Like it's paying off here. He should probably snipe that shield battery actually if he wants to continue this fight. But just starts coming down the ramp as well, but getting shot by the tanks on its way out of there and gets taken out. Yeah,
that's the most badass Archon that ever tried to fight a whole bio army by itself in Muslim.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people will start doing in the future, inevitably, is if you see a shield overcharge, you have to micro against it. Like, you have to target it down, because otherwise those units last forever.
But I think at this point, I think the scales have tipped maybe a little bit too far, even with all of the bio pretty much walking around half dead to overstimming. It doesn't seem that it's going to help in the final moments. Future is able to close it out with the 2